Campaign and its allies are running out of time to make the case and have already lost multiple legal challenges.
Fox's Mark Meredith. And in the race for a COVID vaccine, the drug maker Pfizer announcing Friday that it submitted an application to the FDA to authorize its coronavirus vaccine for emergency use. Tennessee Rep. Mark Green on America's News headquarters.
We will have people vaccinated. I talked to Pfizer this week, and they anticipate their delivery before the end of the year. So, yeah, I think there'll be a huge dent in herd immunity.
And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on how long he thinks it will take for a widespread use of a vaccine.
I will wager you dollars to donuts it's 6 months at a minimum before you hit critical mass with the vaccine.
And the drug company Regeneron has also been granted FDA emergency authorization for its COVID-19 antibody treatment, which President Trump received when he contracted the virus. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglonia from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
The coronavirus pandemic continues pummeling the U.S. as cases surge and hospitalizations are steadily increasing.
The country is approaching an average of 200,000 new infections a day as the U.S. adds 1.2 million more cases in the last week alone. But help could be on the way soon as Pfizer awaits emergency approval from the FDA for its COVID-19 vaccine. Officials are preparing for an almost immediate rollout. The White House task force said the U.S. will ship millions of doses of the vaccine within 24 hours. If the FDA grants emergency use authorization, healthcare workers, nursing homes, and those with serious medical conditions are expected to be among the first to receive the vaccine.
Fox's Charles Watson. Meanwhile, President Trump still busy with legal battles over the election results. Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz on Sunday Morning Futures.
Once the electors are certified and once they cast their vote, I can't see any legal route to undoing that, even if they were to find fraud later on. There's certainly nothing in the Constitution about that. I think they do have to get their evidence in.
And this as protest groups rally in Atlanta after Georgia certifies election results.
Supporters of the president say they are not giving up just yet, but some of them clashing with counter-protesters that we saw this weekend. They're in Wisconsin, about 600 people gathering in Wauwasota to support President Donald Trump. Drone video catching one driver hitting 2 pedestrians there before fleeing the scene. Police also took one person into custody for disorderly conduct. In Atlanta, opposing rallies the day after the state went blue. The Georgia Secretary of State officially certifying the result for President-elect Joe Biden. Crowds alleging election fraud, chanting "Stop the Steal." A large police presence separating them from counter-protesters. The scene really showcasing the clear divide in the perception of this general election.
Fox's Alex Hogan. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
As the island takes a stand against the coronavirus, so do the professionals at Horizon Properties. As a property owner and with the current health scare the island is facing, the last thing you should worry about is collecting rental payments or sending out a repairman to your property. Let Horizon Properties take care of that for you as you remain safe at home. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at www.horizonproperties.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. At least not on Monday, right, Jose?
Not on your watch.
Yes, sir. Well, we made it through the weekend again. 70 hours. 70 hours ago, we wrapped up Tall Tales for last week, and Jose and I, it's tough, but we make it, and here we are back right where we really like to be at the beginning of another week of Tall Tales. The ability to communicate with our international radio listening audience of tailgaters is a pearl beyond price.
Even Guam cried tears of joy all day.
Exactly. All right, so Demi Ikotny. We've got the daily news here on Zemi Ikotny. You'll recall that on Zemi Ikotny, which is my backwards bilingual play on words, which means meet the press, evaluate the editorial pages of our two local newspapers, go through and do a lot of nitpicking and grammar and usage correction. And when I'm finished, I award the coveted blue star to the better of the two, which is almost always the Post, if there is a blue star, because the Daily News doesn't run local editorials anymore. They run boilerplate from the USA Today and Gannett News Service. Today being no exception. Oh, not only is it boilerplate from those two sources rather than local editorial, but 99 times out of 100, the point of the editorial is to say really bad things about Donald Trump. Following the old maxim, if you can't say something bad about somebody, don't say anything at all. Today is no exception. The title today is Trump Whiffs. And I shouldn't read it. I should hang on to this until the seventh inning stretch, I guess.
Well, the reason why Biden seemingly has the most votes is because they've ran out of material to write about Trump.
I guess so. Yeah. Okay. So the this one I won't spend much time on it. Commander-in-Chief settles scores and denies Joe Biden a presidential transition. No one expected President Donald Trump to be as gracious in defeat as was George H.W. Bush in 1992, the last time an incumbent was defeated. And perhaps only the starry-eyed would think Trump might implement a more aggressive pandemic response now that the numbers are surging again. Even so, in the past couple of weeks, unable to face reality and unwilling to concede his election loss to Joe Biden, Trump has sunk to new levels of depravity and narcissism. No need to read the rest of the editorial. It's all the same stuff. I turn then to the Guam Daily Post, and today I'm going to have to take issue with some of the theory and orientation of the Guam Daily Post. Here's what the Post says today. GPA's plan to increase the cost of power is ill-timed. The Guam Power Authority is proposing a nearly 28% increase in the fuel surcharge on its customers' power bills. GPA has a two-step approval process to go through. First, from the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, and then the rate-setting Public Utilities Commission will have the final say. GPA wants to raise the surcharge from 8.6% per kilowatt hour to 11 cents. This proposed surcharge is also meant to fund GPA's rebate program that pays customers part of the cost of replacing old appliances and air conditioning units with ones that use less electricity. While the rebate program encourages energy efficiency and helps to reduce GPA's use of fuel oil or diesel to run its power plants, the rebate benefits the homeowners more than the tenants. Now, let's just stop there for a second. That's what I mean. The Post somehow has an overwhelming desire to come across as a populist publication from time to time. Today is a classic example. So let's say that I own an apartment building called Martinez Arms, and there are 6 apartment units in that building, each of which has an air conditioner that's been there for quite some time. And I decide, well, they're nearing the end of their useful life. I got to think about replacing them. So I could go with this air conditioner over here or this one over here. This one I get a rebate for because it's more energy efficient. Now, it's a little more expensive, but with a rebate, it comes out okay. So I buy the air conditioner that uses less electrical power. Does that benefit me or does it benefit the tenant that lives in that unit?
That would be the tenant.
Who pays the power bill, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But, you know, we have to, this whole editorial is in this, you know, those people with money are just always gouging the people that don't have money. They shouldn't have to pay for that. So I've made this point before. Even when I go through an editorial and I don't agree with the theory of the editorial, I don't agree with the fact-finding in the editorial, it doesn't necessarily mean that the editorial isn't going to get the blue star. It makes it a lot harder. But this is a classic case of the Post just missing the boat on their theory that they're advancing, that by using this rebate to install energy-efficient appliances, replacing appliances and air conditioning units with ones that use electricity. It only helps the landlord. It doesn't help the tenant. While the rebate program encourages energy efficiency and helps to reduce GPA's use of fuel oil, the rebate benefits homeowners more than renters. Adding the cost of the rebate program to the fuel surcharge puts renters at a disadvantage because they don't get the full benefit of the rebate. Renters aren't usually able to change out the air conditioning units and water heaters in apartment units or rented houses because oftentimes they are the property of the landlord. So they will end up paying a higher power bill that's going to benefit mainly those who own their own homes or business locations. The CCU wants to see an assessment of what expenses GPA can cut in order to avoid a rate increase before the CCU decides and before the proposal is submitted to the PUC. Well, I'm going to even fault the CCU there for a moment. What we're talking about with the fuel adjustment charge is this. The price of oil that is burned in the power plants is volatile. It changes all the time. So what the Power Authority attempts to do is they try to figure out, do some complicated calculations, what rate would work for the next 6 months, taking into consideration scarcity, market factors, etc. So they set that rate for the next 6 months. If in the meantime, if the price of oil goes down, the rate will go down. If it goes up, it goes up. So if the CCU wants GPA to cut expenses, that should happen all the time. Because if you look at it from a business standpoint, the price of oil is what's called cost of goods sold. So you don't try to be more efficient just because cost of goods sold goes up. You try to be more efficient all the time, every day. Because if you're in business, the more efficient you are, the more your profit. If you're a public utility like the Power Authority, the more efficient you are, the lower rates you can charge your customers. So the fact that the cost of oil is going up, and now we're saying, well, let's see if we could be more efficient, it just doesn't sit very well. The editorial goes on to say, if approved by the Public Utilities Commission, the rate change will take effect in February 2021. The main reason for the proposed increase in fuel charge is a projection that oil prices will go up and not the energy efficient dimension. That's not the main reason. Without increasing the fuel charge, GPA anticipates it will fall $14 million short of what it charges customers for the fuel surcharge and the projected cost of fuel. The average market price of residual fuel oil and diesel used in the initial filing for the current surcharge was $39.30 per barrel. The current projection is $48.50 per barrel by the end of January, according to GPA and documents filed with the CCU. CCU member Simon Sanchez asked for an assessment by Tuesday on what expenses GPA may sacrifice in order not to raise the surcharge. What expenses GPA may sacrifice. It's not a very good choice of words. GPA should seriously consider whether it can cut some personnel costs. Reducing pay or benefits is one option and is common for many businesses and even governments that face a financial shortfall. But let's go back again to the cost of oil. Cost of goods sold is going up. So when a merchant's cost of goods sold goes up, there are a couple of things he can do. He cannot buy as much inventory. He can reduce his inventory, or he can raise his price. I think only one of those alternatives is available for the GPA, because in order to not raise the prices, the GP, what the Post is suggesting here, don't buy quite so much oil, then you won't be spending as much money. So we could buy less. Let's say we only buy half as much oil. We wouldn't have to raise the price then. But of course, we'd be turning off the power half the time. Somehow I don't think that the customers of GPA would think that's a very good solution. GPA can no longer continue to shove all of the higher costs of operating power plants and electricity to homes, businesses, and government offices to customers. It's not shove. That's a good word. A good word. Now, those folks with a memory will remember when we didn't have this fuel adjustment charge, when that wasn't part of the bill. So the GPA would set a rate, the cost of oil would go up. GPA would not raise the cost of power. We had a couple of senators with Don Parkinson, whose whole political shtick was, I'm not going to let them raise your power. I'm going to look out for you. And The effect on the power authority was devastating because you can't run a power authority on nothing. And as I've so laboriously pointed out, when the cost of oil goes up, you got to charge more for your electricity. So I thought, a really good move, once we got a CCU running the power authority, they adopted this fuel adjustment charge. So the price goes up, the price comes down. There's no shoving involved here. GPA can no longer shove all of the higher costs of operating power plants and bringing electricity to homes, businesses, etc., to customers. If it doesn't shove the cost to its customers, it's like any other business. If you don't charge enough for your product to cover your costs, you're going to go out of business. Then the Post goes on to say, customers have breaking points, and in this pandemic, it's safe to say many are close to the breaking point financially. You can see where this is going. The Power Authority has to take into account that changes in fuel prices in the international markets haven't been the only factor in GPA's past fuel cost increases. The consequence of the fire and explosion at the poorly run Cabot power plant has hit ratepayers' pockets too. Let's look back to August 2015. GPA's Cabot 3 and 4 power generating units failed. A fire and subsequent explosion caused them to fail. A more fuel-efficient power plant is supposed to replace the damaged units. We have not seen the new power plant come to fruition. Well, it's in the works. Since the explosion, GPA has had to use the more expensive number 2 diesel fuel in order to run generators that make up for the catastrophic failure of Cabot 3 and 4, according to a previous PUC document. GPA's cost for number 2 fuel increased from approximately $2 million per month to between $4 and $5 million per month, according to PUC documents in 2016. Essentially, that tells us GPA's cost of fuel increased 24 to 36 million in a year, and that's a result of the explosion at Cabot and not really a result of fluctuating fuel prices. The management of GPA and its board need to really look at how GPA can share the pain with the fuel surcharge costs. So what I'm reading here, let's read this in a light most favorable to the Post and most unfavorable to GPA. You guys weren't on the job, and those 2 power plants blew up. And now, now it's costing us more money. So you shouldn't raise you should not raise the prices for power. Well, who's going to pay for all of this stuff?
That entity, GPA.
Yeah, we'll make GPA pay for it. See, don't pass it on. GPA, you got to pay for it yourself because you screwed up. Maybe what we ought to do is not buy from GPA anymore. We should buy our electricity from another company. Yeah. The management of GPA and its board I don't know if GPA has a board. There is a commission called the CCU. I don't think GPA has a board. Need to really look at how GPA can share the pain with the surcharge cost. That's a hard sentence to get your arms around. Raising the cost of providing electricity to homes and businesses is ill-timed. Yeah, there's only 2 times when you can raise the cost of anything, before your birthday and after your birthday, and neither one of them is worth a darn. Tens of thousands of Guam's private sector workers, managers, and business owners are reeling from the economic fallout of the Wuhan virus. GPA needs to reassess what it can do internally to cut expenses and let the ratepayers know line by line of its cost-cutting efforts. As I said at the beginning of this rant here, should have done that long ago. You don't need an increase in the cost of fuel to prompt you to do that. Going back, next to fuel, personnel is another big ticket item on GPA's budget. Pay cuts should be considered. So the pain of Cabris 3 and 4 blowing up, that pain should be shared by employees at GPA. That's great. Now, if it's time to cut salaries, it's time to cut salaries. If that has to be done for economic factors, but the sharing the pain argument opposed, I'm really kind of taken aback at your entire approach, populist approach to this whole thing. Those guys at GPA are making so much money. Instead of raising rates, they should cut their pay, and we wouldn't have to raise the power bills.
That's the last paragraph. Is it going to be a part 2? Because it didn't say much on that at all.
No, that's just one line. Yeah. Okay, so from there we can go to the card. And this is what I've got on the card for today. I've got Lieutenant Governor Josh versus the straw man. I've got James Campbell versus the District Court of Guam. Mary Torres's Bill 312 versus the merit system. Dairy farmers and the Republicans versus the governor. Kentucky's Attorney General versus Levin Camacho. Tucker Carlson versus Sidney Powell. Democrats versus Big Law. And Tall Tales versus Justice Alito. Starting out with Josh versus the straw man. And this I pick up from a story that ran on a story by Julianne Hernandez on PNC News on November 21. And you start right out, if you can't get your headline right, how is the rest of your story going to go? And this is what the headline reads. The governor prohibited by church from becoming godparent to his niece because he's gay.
Nope.
Yeah, where's that horn for wrong? You have one of those? You have one, don't you?
No, we don't have a buzzer.
Yeah.
We need a buzzer.
Yeah. Okay, so the headline is wrong. So let's go into it again. Now, the Catholic Church did not allow Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio to become a godparent. It was the Catholic Church, right? This great big building down in Agana stopped him from doing that. Did not allow Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio to become a godparent to his niece because of his involvement in a same-sex relationship. Let's just stop here and parse for a moment. We all know that since the Oberfell case, two men, Herman and Henry, can enter into what is, I think, euphemistically called a civil marriage. And by the same token, Herminia and Henrietta can do the same thing. Do they have to be homosexual in order to do that? No. You don't. If you're not married to somebody else, if you're single and your neighbor is single and you want to marry your neighbor and he happens to be a guy, you can enter into a civil marriage with him. You don't have to go down and prove that you're a homosexual in order to get your marriage license.
Or any kind of sexual relations with the partner.
Exactly. Yeah, you could both be celibate, lifetime celibates. So it's kind of important, Julianne, when you're writing something about something, to know a little bit what you're writing about. Anyhow, according to the story, the Catholic Church did not allow Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio to become a godparent to his niece because of his involvement in a same-sex relationship. Tenorio went on air with K57's Patty Arroyo and says that when he was chosen to be the godfather of his niece for her confirmation, he was called into the church offices. Tenorio, expecting to start his godfather requirements, was instead informed of something else. Where's that 19th floor chord, Jose? Can you play that? Yeah. Let's try it again. Tenorio, expecting to start his godfather requirements, was instead informed of something else. Yeah. Lieutenant Governor, as you were, Lieutenant Governor prohibited by church from becoming godparent to his niece because he's gay. No. No, a person can be a homosexual and be a godfather to his niece at the same time. The Catholic Church, once again, this anthropomorphic building, did not allow Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio to become a godfather to his niece because of his involvement in a same-sex relationship. Tenorio went on air with K57's Patty Arroyo and says that when he was chosen to be the godfather of his niece for confirmation, he was called into the church offices. Tenorio, wait a minute. Yeah, I already read that once. I liked it so much I read it twice. Going on, I was called in, and one of the priests who I'm friends with unfortunately had to send the message to me from the Archbishop that there had been a complaint lodged in the parish when I was seen in a practice for confirmation. I got to stop here for a second now. I have to wonder why the Archbishop got involved in this. I have a rather evil suspicion here. I have this mental image of the priest saying, you know, Josh, I got some really bad news for you. It's not me. It's the bishop. The bishop said, you can't be the godfather. I don't, it's not me. It's the bishop. When actually calls like this are exactly what priests are for. It's their job. So that if a person is not conforming to the tenets of the Catholic religion, he's not supposed to participate in sacraments. And it's supposed to be the priest who says, it ain't your night, kid. We're going for the price on Wilson. You can't do this. So, again, the key word here is cover. If it was just up to me, well, it's the bishop. And then I was told I would not be able to participate, Tenorio said. He added, I thought I was going in to speak with the priest and do a confession, right, for the Mass. But it turned out it was just to let me know that the Archbishop is praying for me. But you're not going to be able to participate and confirm in the church because of your same-sex relationship. According to Tenorio, the church has a legal authority to do this. Let me read you the law about the church, Josh. Apparently, even though you're the lieutenant governor, we would expect you to have at least a passing formality as you were familiarity with the Constitution, since when you were sworn in, you swore to uphold it. The First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So it's not that the bishop has the legal authority to tell you you can't be the godfather of your niece. He has the authority of the Roman Catholic Church. The priest has that authority. According to Tenorio, the church has a legal authority to do this, but there's no question. Now, here we come to the straw man. There's no question that his experience is evident that there will, and this is not a quote, this is the reporter's conclusion. According to Tenorio, the church has legal authority to do this, but there's no question that his experience is evident that there will continue to be a movement against the rights of those who are living their lives independently in the LGBTQ community. So Tenorio takes an issue, that's personal to him, and he wants to put it up on the skyline, but he wants to use it as a perch to once again restate his agenda. And then he goes on to say, here's a direct quote, "I would expect that, unfortunately, those will be the same voices that will try to pass legislation. Those, that would be the church, would be the same voices."
The church building.
The church building, yeah. That will try to pass legislation to reduce the number of freedoms and liberties we have here on the island.
That's an ironic statement.
So those same people that are involved in the church and his not being able to be the godfather for his niece because he's in a same-sex relationship will try to pass legislation to reduce the number of freedoms and liberties that we have here in the island. I wonder which ones. Wow, it's just amazing. And this is our lieutenant governor. Along the same lines, I haven't mentioned this as often as I should, but you know, Tall Tales is put up on Jungle Watch every day. So if you miss Tall Tales, or if you want to go back and review an episode or something like that, you can just go to Tall Tales, talltales.info, and the video of the show is there every day. And in addition to the comments. So let me take a short break and I'll come back to Tall Tales.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We all need to fight COVID-19, and we need all the weapons we can get to beat it. Your smartphone can be one of the most powerful tools to battle this pandemic. The Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app can let you know if you've been exposed to someone who has the virus. Add your phone to the COVID fight by going to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are. As I was mentioning just before the break, Tall Tales is on Jungle Watch every day. So just junglewatch.info. It's an easy way to get to the video of Tall Tales, all the comments, etc. And you can make your own comments. In fact, you can make anonymous comments on Jungle Watch as to anything that was in the show. So here's, I'm going to give you a little bit of Jungle Watch here. Jungle Watch says, to his credit, not even Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio blamed the, quote, church for his being prohibited from being a gay godparent because, quote, he's gay. Tenorio correctly connected the church's prohibition to his being a confirmation godparent sponsor to his niece to his being in a same-sex relationship, and not because, quote, he's gay. But that didn't stop the Pacific News Center from lying about both what the church said and about what Tenorio himself said, headlining its story, Lieutenant Governor prohibited by church from becoming godparent to his niece because he's gay. Yeah. Now, of course, it makes it a whole lot easier for those on the left to throw around some of their favorite vocabulary. Homophobes. The church is homophobes, right? When you have wrong headlines like this. And then the Jungle Watch goes on to say, like God, the Catholic Church is no respecter of persons, meaning neither God nor the church has favorites. The qualifications for being a godparent, apply equally to everyone, regardless of sexual orientation and the nature of one's sexual relationships. The qualifications for being a godfather, as your godparent, or in this case, a confirmation sponsor, are set forth in church law called canon law. And like civil law, church law is no respecter of persons. Those qualifications can be read in full, but the same question is here at canon law 874, section 1.3. A godparent must be a Catholic who has been confirmed and has already received the most holy sacrament of the Eucharist, and who leads a life of faith in keeping with the function to be taken on. In the interview on K57, the show's host inquires into Tenorio's reception of the required sacraments, but does not inquire into whether or not Tenorio is leading a, quote, life of faith in keeping with the function to be taken on. Tenorio's answer, of course, would have to be no, which is the same answer a person engaged in a sexual relationship with another person of the opposite sex he or she is not married to would have to answer. So in plain English, if Bubba is shacking up with his girlfriend, he can't be his niece's godparent. It's just that simple. Also, one can be single and still be a godparent. So it's not about who you are married to or in a relationship with. It's about whether or not you are living in a perpetual and especially public state of unrepentant mortal sin. Now, there's that word, sin. A word that we're just never supposed to use anymore. That word, I think, was banned in 1993, wasn't it? We're not supposed to say that anymore.
Depends on what your definition of is.
Of course, yeah. Let's see. Living in a perpetual and especially a public state of unrepentant mortal sin, which would be the very opposite of, quote, the function to be taken on, which is, and this is for baptizing, for confirmation or baptism. The baptized person or confirmee to lead a Christian life in keeping with baptism or confirmation and to fulfill faithfully the obligations inherent in it. That's what the godparent's job is, to assist.
Not to buy the wedding dress?
No. That's okay.
Birthday dinners?
Collateral damage. Yeah. So, and the godparent relationship is the godparent is supposed to see to it that his godson or goddaughter maintains a good Catholic life. That's what it's all about. The bottom line is that sex is about, quote, be fruitful and multiply. And intentionally sterile acts, whether the same-sex acts or contraceptive acts, are mortally contrary to God's design. There are a few more points in the story that should be made. One wonders why the pastors even had to get the Archbishop involved. I had the same question. Joshua Tenorio is a public figure, and his homosexual lifestyle is not only not a secret, it's a celebrated fact. You remember right after the election? Whoa, man, we're right up there in the skyline. A majority of the members of our legislature are females, and we have the first openly gay lieutenant governor in the whole country. Drum rolls, cheering, etc. Yeah. This is something that could have been politely and discreetly addressed between the pastor and Tenorio. Tenorio even said that at least one of the pastors was his friend. The other matter, given that Tenorio is a public figure that he is, after Tenorio went public about the issue on the radio, quote, the church should have addressed the matter just as publicly. Not that the church should have made this about Tenorio, but the church could have and should have used the opportunity to educate the public, and especially the Catholic faithful, many of whom do not understand what has been set forth in the foregoing. So, there you go. Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio cannot be a godparent.
You know, there's another angle that I looked at this because of the context of that interview. It started out talking about that formation of that new LGBTQ group that he had, and then a question about, is there any fear of this new Supreme Court lineup? You know, of course, speaking of Barrett and Kavanaugh and all those, you know, preying on the fear. So I think it was a situation of picking the low-hanging fruit. Well, let's go after the Catholic Church. Because remember, this happened to him about a month or two ago already.
Oh.
Yeah, so you know, we're an easy target, of course, because of what happened. I say we because I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
Because of what's happened here on the island. And what better opportunity for him to rile up the base than to say, outrage, Catholic Church. But that's my take.
So this is not a recent event, then. His inability to become a godparent happened a month or two ago.
Right, and this most certainly is not a movement from the Catholic Church, because this has been ever since day one of a godparent or a sponsor for a confirmation teacher.
Yeah,
confirmation.
It's always been that way. I didn't listen. Silly me, I don't listen to Patty Arroyo in the morning. I listen to Ray Gibson. So it started out, they were talking about the Supreme Court and the new justices. And
then there was a prayer service for transgendered on Friday, so that was a part of the context also. And it was a prayer service against violence. So, of course, he connected this adverse actions against homosexuality and transgenderism. Let's connect the church to it again.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, see what the church does and see what the result of all of this is.
Exactly.
So we've really got to be on our guard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I titled it, let me see what I titled it. On the card, Josh Tenorio versus a straw man, but it was actually a little bit more than that. It was Josh Tenorio and the manufactured soapbox.
Mm-hmm.
So he took this incident concerning his being a godparent and built a soapbox out of it, which he climbed on and started orating about the persecution of the LGBTQ community and that we had to be on guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, next item on the card is James Campbell versus the District Court of Guam. James Campbell is a graduate of Yale Law School. I won't hold that against him. Yeah, let's take a short break here and we'll come back to Yale Law School.
Iran kacaman mepet COVID-19 o sawasa tarela komun menempam kan ho memaka. Makamkan makamagis sa uma melaude ko seli o mimichani. Nakapam makamagis an kikilalan sa uma kamkal silu eweo ta John naman wuni. Kamte awi lau kam luwachala pagana lasawas. Min lau sawas o tarela memakan o mejikan magoyang suma niyan bambaki kasantiyan tatong gamas irairan biswano o quarantine mi irairtiyan juwang aramas jikan makomkon magasuma. Kom tatong quarantine makom matawa makom juwang aramas ma positive o makom alakasaw makatete makom positive. Haliti sawas matang kendarela maur. Irapoches poidar sang namanaman ng Nanyelu, Micronesian Resource Center, o Station Gun and Choice Broadcasting. Kalangay.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Yeah, okay, so James Campbell is a graduate of Yale Law School. I won't hold that against him. Maybe he couldn't get into a really prestigious school like New Mexico. He's a former intern at the District Court of Guam and an author of Island Judges, published earlier this year by the Yale Law Journal. I had the pleasure of spending a little time with James when he was here, and I've read his law review piece called Island Judges. It's very well done and something that we ought to really capitalize on. So this is what James says. This is a story that ran in the Daily News, or actually a letter to the editor that ran in the Daily News, pardon me. Last week, President Trump announced his intent to nominate Judge Maria Sanzon to the District Court of Guam. On the surface, the announcement looks pretty standard, just one more judicial appointment in Trump's effort to transform the federal bench with his own nominees. You didn't need to say that, James. You really didn't need to say that. But if you look more closely, you'll see that last week's announcement means something entirely different on Guam. Those unfamiliar with the architecture of the American federal court system may not recognize that Guam's federal judges are not protected to the same extent as their stateside counterparts. I'm going to come back to the word protected in a minute. Federal judges in the states, D.C. and Puerto Rico, are fully protected by Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution. They hold their appointments for life and cannot have their salaries reduced by Congress for any reason. On Guam, however, the Organic Act limits federal judges' tenure protection to 10 years. The issue is not whether judicial life tenure is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, let's just stop there for a moment. Those who favor life tenure for a judge says if a judge doesn't have life tenure, he can't be really independent. He can't make the hard decisions, apply the law to the facts, make the hard decisions, etc., if he's going to have to go before the public to be elected. Those who favor elected judges say, if you give a judge a life tenure, he may get so far out of touch with the people that he's supposed to be serving that he makes really wacky decisions. So it's much better to elect our judges. Now, here on Guam, we appoint our judges, and they go up for retention elections every 8 years, but it's almost a pro forma task. It's very rare that a judge is ever dumped in a retention election. So federal judges have life tenure, and the idea is that they're supposed to be impartial and fair and not subject to any kind of outside pressure at all. I think that's a good thing. And then a little bit more on the architecture of the federal judiciary. Federal courts have jurisdiction over matters that arise under the Constitution or laws of the United States, and they have jurisdiction in cases where the litigants are citizens of different or residents of different states. It's called diversity jurisdiction. So if I'm a resident of New Mexico and I want to sue a Texas corporation for whatever reason, I can file suit in the district court, in federal court. I don't have to submit myself to the jurisdiction of the Texas courts to sue that Texas defendant. And the reason for that is that the framers obviously knew that there would be what's called hometowning. If you're from New Mexico and you sue in Texas and you sue a Texan, hey, we don't need no guys from New Mexico coming in here and suing Texans. We're going to rule against him. So that's another reason that the life tenure of federal judges is important, this impartiality and lack of perhaps false loyalty to a particular jurisdiction. James says reasonable minds can disagree about that, and he's right. What matters is that whenever Guam's federal judges reaches the end of their, good job, James, well, he goes to Yale, whatever. We went to Yale. What can you expect? In this particular case, the there was her. What matters is that whenever a federal judge reaches the end of their 10-year term, the president can keep that judge in a limbo status indefinitely, dangling both the threat of replacement and the possibility of reappointment or just continuing on the bench. In the event of the ruling the White House doesn't like, the president could then quietly fire Guam's judge under the guise of a new appointment. It could be just a coincidence that Trump announced his decision to replace Chief Judge Tydinko Gatewood, whose official term expired 5 years ago. That's why I meant when I said it's her, not there. Shortly after she ruled against the federal government and declared Guam's exclusion from federal SSI benefits unconstitutional, a decision which, if upheld, will entitle some disabled, blind, and elderly residents to up to $800 per month in federal assistance. Or it could be exactly what it looks like, an opaque mix of political maneuvering and retaliation. And again, we don't need to know the answer to that question because the consideration is still the same. If the federal judge does not have life tenure, then we'll be having this kinds of conversation. Now, he gets a little bit off the ranch here when he said Guam should take note of the inequality baked into the structure of the territory's federal court. Guam has zero say in choosing the president who appoints judges, 0 senators who confirm judges, and no voting representation on the floor of the House. Without a meaningful voice, access to an independent federal judge can mean everything to Guam. In any dispute of constitutional significance, military buildup, access to federal benefits, the voting registry, land trust issues, compact of free association impacts, taxation, etc. Well, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to James Campbell and a very interesting letter to the editor.
His team Welcome. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. Two Democratic sources confirmed to Fox News that President-elect Joe Biden will nominate Tony Blinken for Secretary of State.
Blinken was a national security advisor during the Obama administration and has had close ties to Joe Biden for many years. The biggest positions, such as Secretary of Treasury and Defense, are still up for grabs.
That's Fox's Ashley Strohmeyer. And the sources also say Linda Thomas Greenfield is expected to be tapped for UN ambassador, and Jake Sullivan is the likely pick for National Security Advisor. The president-elect is making an official announcement of some of his cabinet picks on Tuesday. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to refuse to concede the election, and his legal team has alleged the Dominion voting system, which is used in 28 states, switched the votes. Michael Steele, who represents Dominion, pushed back on the allegations Sunday while appearing on Fox's America's News headquarters.
When a voter votes on a Dominion machine, they fill out their ballot on a touchscreen. They're given a printed copy, which they then give to a local election official for safekeeping. If any electronic interference had taken place, the tally reported electronically would not match the printed ballots. And in every case where we've looked at, in Georgia, all across the country, the printed ballots, the gold standard in election security, has matched the electronic tally.
Meanwhile, the Trump campaign filed an appeal Sunday after a federal judge's dismissal of his campaign's effort to block the certification votes in Pennsylvania. And they're also requesting a recount of the votes in Georgia after officials certified the results there. Also new tonight, 2 people have died in a stabbing Sunday at a church in California, and multiple other people are seriously hurt. The San Jose Police Department tweeted that officers responded to the stabbing at Grace Baptist Church. Mayor Sam Liccardo said in a tweet late Sunday, quote, "Our hearts go out to the families and the 2 community members who have succumbed to stabbing wounds in the attack at Grace Baptist Church downtown." America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Podcasts. The CDC urging Americans to stay home this Thanksgiving after coronavirus cases spike across the nation.
Travel is down significantly compared to this time last year. However, at least 1 million people still passed through airports across the country on Friday. That's the second time the TSA screened at least 1 million passengers in a single day since the pandemic started. The last time was on October 18th. The CDC strongly recommends that people do not travel to lessen their chance of getting or spreading COVID. But people are still taking their chances. Chicago's busy O'Hare Airport also saw heavy traffic on Friday. At LAX, another huge travel hub, half of the airline seats were sold compared to last year when over 3 million people came through the airport over Thanksgiving.
Fox's Christina Coleman. And gas prices continue to slide. Trilby Lundberg, the publisher of the Lundberg Survey.
Gasoline prices are still slipping, but this time just 1 penny in the past 2 weeks. The new price is $2.18. It would have been more than a dime, I believe, if not for higher crude oil prices in the same period.
Lundberg adds that crude oil prices rose due to the excitement over a potential coronavirus vaccine. Baton Rouge has the lowest price per gallon at $1.73. San Francisco is the highest at $3.33. Meanwhile, another week of the same 8 teams at the top of college football's rankings.
Not much movement in the latest edition of the Associated Press Top 25 poll. Alabama is your unanimous #1 team, followed by Notre Dame, Ohio State, Clemson, Texas A&M, Florida, Cincinnati, and BYU. Oregon and Miami, newcomers to the top 10, replace Indiana and Wisconsin. Northwestern made the biggest jump from 19 to 11 following their win over the Badgers Saturday. The ranking is the highest for the Wildcats since 1996. North Carolina, the only new team to the rankings this week, sliding in to the number 25 spot.
Fox's Ryan Mayer. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet. and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
As the island takes a stand against the coronavirus, so do the professionals at Horizon Properties. As a property owner and with the current health scare the island is facing, the last thing you should worry about is collecting rental payments or sending out a repairman to your property. Let Horizon Properties take care of that for you as you remain safe at home. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at www.horizonproperties.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, so here we are back with James Campbell here in the District Court of Guam. James has pointed out that because our district court judge does not have a lifetime appointment, the independence of the judge is rightfully questioned, especially when the judge is sitting beyond the end of their term. And then James goes on to say, even the official name of the tribunal, quote, the District Court of Guam, hints at a subtle but important distinction. District courts in the states follow an entirely different naming convention. For instance, quote, United States District Court for the District of Hawaii. Now you'll see that, even in the District Court of Guam, you'll see the big plaque that says United States District Court for the District of Guam, probably because the plaques are all bought in bulk and it'd be too expensive to have the special ones made for the territories. And people oftentimes refer to the District Court of Guam as the United States District Court for the District of Guam. Upon his retirement from judicial service in 1992, the late Chief Judge Cristobal C. Duenas told an audience of distinguished federal judges, I had a great hope that before long the District Court of Guam would have the potential of becoming a United States District Court. Well, it now does have that potential. Now, as James laid out so clearly in his law review article called Island Judges, there were reasons that it didn't make sense for Guam to have a life tenured judge in the district court, in a U.S. district court, starting out with the fact that the district court, up until not too long ago, had jurisdiction other than federal jurisdiction. As the government of Guam was designed, we had a local permission for a local elected legislature, a president appointed by, as you were a governor appointed by the United States, and the judicial system was the District Court of Guam, with a judge appointed by the president. And the legislature had the ability to create other courts other than the district court. But in the beginning, it was all district court. So even when we created an island court, which was a local court, up until 1970, well, let's see, the 1990s, appeal from the island court, which became the Superior Court, went to the appellate division of the district court. So this, you know, the district court for the Central District of California does not have an appellate division. It just isn't how it's set up. Also, for much of its life, the District Court of Guam would entertain divorce actions. And of course, the appellate division would entertain divorce actions. Federal courts don't handle divorce actions. In fact, once upon a time, it was said that federal courts don't do domestic relations cases. That wasn't until, you know, the whole Obergefell thing came along, and then there was a quick change somehow. So that was one of the reasons that it wouldn't have worked in the beginning to fit a district court into Guam. Now, that's pretty much over. No more appellate division of the district court. District court has the same jurisdiction as a district court, say, in California, but with a couple of exceptions. One, that is that unlike other districts, the judge of the District Court of Guam is also the bankruptcy judge for the District of Guam. And unlike other, well, I guess it's the same, because cases involving the territorial income tax go to the District Court, not the Superior Court. James, in his law review article, lays out the fact that the United States the United States Judicial Conference never really got behind the idea of a district court for Guam. But it is a possibility. Puerto Rico, which is, for all practical purposes, an unincorporated, organized territory of the United States, has had district courts for a long, long time. You can kind of blame that on the fact that in 1952, the United States thought that it had created a sovereign entity called the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Turned out that it hadn't, but that certainly cleared the way for a district court of Puerto Rico. But as far as I know, the Virgin Islands has never asked for a district court with a judge with a lifetime tenure. And I know we've never asked for it here. No one has ever even said anything about it except two people. One of them is probably on his way to the drive-through right now. Drive-through Jack and me. I brought this up on more than one occasion. That one of the things that we ought to do is instead of kvetching about how unfortunate we are, we ought to be petitioning Congress to give us a district court under Article 3 of the Constitution, or as was done in Puerto Rico, analogous to an Article 3 court, and a judge with life tenure. Because, and I'll get back to James's article here, it's really important that we at least have the assurance that when the United States is a party in a case before the district court, that we're not going to get hometown, because the district court judge is thinking, well, I don't know, the guys back in justice aren't going to like it if I rule this way, and the president's not going to like it. So I'm going to go finish up James's article here. So in any case, we've never asked for it. And my suspicion is that if we asked for it and we did it in a proper way, we could probably get it, because it's a no-cost option. It's the kind of thing that politicians can probably say, yeah, we extended, judicial independence to the island of Guam. I can't imagine who would be against it. But then James does a good job up to here, but he kind of goes off the rails again. He says, it's no accident that last week's march for Chamorro's self-determination ended at the District Court of Guam. Well, it was an accident. James Campbell, they wouldn't know you from Adams off Ox. They know that the District Court is a big building down in Inigwik. They know that Dave Davis's case was tried there, but all of the rest we're talking about here, it's as well known to them as the Rosetta Stone. So it was an accident. And the reason that it ended there was it wasn't that far from Government House to the District Court. It was a walkable distance. And then there's a symbolism, of course, the hate Dave Davis aspect of that. Then he goes on to say, the District Court has shaped Guam's relationship to the federal government and the rights of Chamorro people as much as any institution since naval rule. The rights of Chamorro people. I think the District Court of Guam, in cases that arise under the Constitution and laws of the United States, deal with the rights of all the people. And as demonstrated in the Davis case, there isn't any special category of rights for Chamorro people. And James, to suggest that there are rights, independent rights of Chamorro people, kind of goes against the whole theory of your letter to the editor here. Okay. Then he goes on to say, whatever the merits of the court's individual decisions, Guam is right to ask why the United States refuses to follow its own commitments spelled out in Article 3 of the Constitution when it comes to federal judges. When did the United States ever refuse our request for an Article 3 style judge? You know what the answer to that is, Jose?
Never.
Never. So, this playing with words here, Chamorro self-determination, refuses, etc., detracts from the persuasion of your article here, James. Unfortunate. Okay, then he goes on to say the fact that recent presidents have appointed sons and daughters of Guam to the federal court, recent going all the way back to 1970. Who was president in 1970?
Was that Nixon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recent presidents. Yeah.
I had to dig deep into I was not born in 1970 archives.
Yeah, I was.
Well, it's recent for you.
Yeah. But if those judges cannot be free from doubt when they're asked to decide tough cases where Guam's interests are directly opposed to the White House's agenda, Guam must ask whether this institution can really represent equal justice under law. It's fair. Now, I'm going to go back here to the word protection. The life tenure thing is not protecting the judge. It's protecting the independence of the judiciary. So politicians, and I keep coming back to the same thing. Instead of going this, all of this heated rhetoric about separatism, if we attempted to make the best of our relationship with the United States, we'd all be a lot better off. This is a classic example. Even when we came forward with our Commonwealth, our so-called Commonwealth, we didn't ask for a life tenure judge for the district court. So some of the things that are in the covenant with the Northern Marianas that we could adopt by reference, like the 903 committee, et cetera. There are lots of things that we could do that would enhance our relationship with the United States. But, of course, the separatists, being a relatively small but very vocal part of the community, get a whole lot more press than those who would advocate sensible things like life tenure for our district court of Guam judge. Okay, I go on next to Mary Torres's Bill 312 versus the merit system of the government of Guam. And I see I've got somebody, yeah. Okay, we've got Martinez who wants to talk about make a comment about judge appointments. Go for it, Martinez.
Yes, good afternoon, Judge. Two things of the judge's appointment. First of all, the reason for a lifetime term of federal district judges, the main reason is if you don't give them a lifetime term, you don't want a sitting judge who's would be looking for a job because his term's going to be up in a few months. So to prevent that, their lifetime. You don't want them, oh, my term's going to be up in February, I'm going to go look for a job while they're looking on the bench.
Maybe I can get a job with one of the big firms, huh?
Right, that's exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing is, as far as what you said about SSI, I don't think that's it. What it is you're right, it's been many years since it's been open, this judgeship. I think there was, well, as you know, there was a certain person that the Calvo administration wanted to get this district court judge, and that didn't work out. I think there was an understanding between, the National Republican Party, the Trump administration, the Calvo administration, that before this president leaves office, whoever Governor Calvo wants would be appointed to the judge. Well, so it's no surprise right after we know he's going to be leaving office shortly, the appointment is made by Trump. Back as far as 1984, if not before that, the tradition is, and it still is today, that for a district judge, the trial court, if that court is located in an area and and the congressional district in that area, the member of Congress is of the same party as the president, then not only does the member of Congress make the appointment, the member of Congress announces the appointment, goes back home and announces the appointment. If President Trump finishes and doesn't make his appointment, this would be Mike Nicholas's appointment. Because it's located in Guam. He's a congressman from Guam. He's in the same political party as the new incoming president. It would be his. So another reason is to take this away from him and give it to a Republican. So I think that's what happened here. And it should sell true. They could have the hearing by Skype or Zoom. She's already had an FBI background check years ago. They can update it. And, they got one until January 3rd at least, or if not, to get it true. That's what I want to say, those 2 points.
Yeah, the only thing that I would come back to is that James Campbell didn't say that the SSI decision was it. He just used it as a possible example of the district judge ruling against the interest of the national government. He didn't say that was it.
Right, but that had nothing to do with it. I think it's
and he would probably say
before Trump leaves office, they'll get the appointment.
He would probably say the same thing. It didn't have anything to do with it, but he used it as an example of the failure of the system that we have right now. Okay, thanks for calling, Martinez.
Welcome, Judge.
Okay, so Mary Torres's Bill 312 and the merit system of the government of Guam. And this is an article in the Post called Hiring of EMTs Skips a Job Qualification. Now, you remember what Mary Torres's Bill 312 was all about? Mary Torres's Bill 312 was about changing the law so that if someone is hired in a government agency to a job for which he wasn't qualified, that hiring can be challenged, but only for 6 months. After 6 months, the person could not be removed from a job that he's not qualified for. Now, I don't know if there's any, this is kind of like SSI and Donald Trump. I don't know if there's any connection here or not, but my suspicious mind suggests that maybe there is. In normal times, the government of Guam requires emergency medical technicians to present a chauffeur's license to be considered for the job. They also would need to go through a national certification process with the Guam Fire Department. In the hiring by the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services of its EMTs, the chauffeur's license requirement has been waived. Now, I peeked into the books a little bit, and I wasn't able to find who can waive what. Public Health is in the process of hiring 10 EMTs, and the decision to waive the requirement was made because the department needs to supplement its rapid engagement team testing staff, which is responsible for door-to-door Wuhan virus testing, said Janella Carrera, spokeswoman for Public Health. It was okay to waive the chauffeur's license requirement because the EMTs will neither be driving ambulances nor staffing ambulances, Carrera said. The 10 EMT Public Health are hiring will supplement the nursing staff conducting door-to-door testing, Carrera said. This team conducted the testing in the area off Route 3, etc. The EMTs are being hired as, quote, temporary Wuhan virus employees. They use COVID-19, but I helped them out. Department of Administration Personnel Services Division Administrator Shane Ngauta said in an internal email. So, as temporary employees, the government is able to use federal Wuhan virus funds. The budget for hiring and the date for the expiration of their employment as CARES Act-funded employees were not immediately available. CARES Act funds in general must be spent by the end of the next month. Carrera said once CARES Act funding can no longer be tapped, the EMT recruits will be transitioned, quote unquote, transitioned. I wonder if we're back to the lead story. As EMTs with the Guam Fire Department. These recruits would then be prepared to pass the national certification process as a part of their moving their employment to GFT, she said. It's unclear whether GFT will have the budget to absorb 10 additional EMTs. Carrera said the 10 have been selected and their GovGuam hiring paperwork is being processed. An emergency medical technician basic, according to GovGuam description, has a valid certificate issued by the Guam Office of Emergency Service, who has been trained in all facets of basic emergency care skills, including automated external defibrillation, etc. The Guam Fire Department has not had a role in the certification of Public Health's future EMTs. Public Health trained and certified its own EMT recruits to become emergency medical technician basics, Carrera said. Well, let's unpack this thing. The whole thing doesn't sound very good to me because, yeah.
Want to take a real quick break first?
Yeah, let's take a quick break, and then I'll come back to another Joe, and then I'll finish up on Mary Torres versus the merit system.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña. and Mezcla Dos, Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago. And while I was in Wrigley Field, who did I run into? I didn't run into Joe when I was in Wrigley Field.
That would have hurt.
I did not run into Joe. I ran into another Joe. So how are you doing, another Joe?
Hey, Bob. So there's all this talk about raising the power rates, and people are raising their hands up in the air and go, oh, well, you know, this is to be anticipated, and, periodically there's going to be a raising of the rates and this and that. And I just thought, man, isn't this, kind of like a periodic taxing then, increase of taxes? If you don't pay attention to the maintaining of there's all sorts of reasons they give, like inefficiency of the power plant, or I think one of them broke down because the order of it wasn't being maintained on the schedule. And so when things break down, of course, it's going to cost money, and that's going to eventually equate to more taxes, right?
No, wrong, another Joe. It's not taxes. It's a rate.
Rates.
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to be higher rates.
Yeah.
It's more or less the same effect. You're gonna have less money in your pocket. It's going to be going to.
Well, you could say the same thing about a hole in your pocket, but I don't see that particular lens is helpful. But go on, another Joe.
So I think if we can anticipate, possibly, the size of the hole in our pocket, so to speak, increasing. Therefore, more and more coins falling out, or maybe more than one hole being created in the pocket, so to speak. We can possibly patch up those holes and not lose as much money. I think I've done enough of those comparisons. But we're going to have to replace stuff, infrastructure, power plants, eventually. But hopefully we maintain them for as long as possible. There's a schedule to maintain them, and yet here we are with a government that can't even maintain a swimming pool. So, it took a swimming pool for us to remember the power plant, and God knows what else we've forgotten about, and things we're going to have to pay attention to in the near future. Of course, the roads and replacing the Department of Administration and I mean, just look at the legislature building, Uncle Bob. It's a new construct, and they can't even keep the roof clean. If you pass by, you're like, has anyone noticed they should probably water blast the roof? If it was your house, and wouldn't you be a little? The older generation might feel ashamed. I don't know about the younger generation, but don't or if just pass by the legislature, Congress building, take a look at the roof. Simple maintaining.
So the point you're making here is that when the GPA raises the rates, what should we do?
Keep in mind that we could be saving money a lot if we maintain what we have effectively in the schedule. And, I hate to go back to comparisons. You got a car, you treat it well, it's going to treat you well, and you don't have to replace it.
Tell that to my 1992 Daihatsu Rocky.
Yeah. There you go. So 92.
So, but you're also you and the Post seem to be saying, maybe not you, but the Post seem to be saying that when things like that happen, you have to punish somebody, and the punishment for GPA is you can't raise the rates. You got to reduce the salary of the people that work at GPA as punishment.
Right.
And my point is, if it's a good business decision, fine, but I don't see that kind of mindset working very well in a business.
I agree. Yeah, and for the younger generations, and for just training the new employees, right? For that effect, let's take a look at the maintenance schedules all across the board of all of our infrastructure, all everything that belongs to the government. Are we doing it right? Are we maintaining what we have the right way, or are we going to have to spend money to repair or replace it sooner because we haven't maintained it? And $30 million for a new cell at the landfill, and they didn't tell us about it. They didn't know about it, and they wait till the last minute, and then they had to take out I forget how they had to take out bonds to cover it.
Yeah, we knew that when that landfill was built, that the life expectancy of the cells that they had there. Another Joe. So this is what I want to zero in on. When a government agency doesn't do what it's supposed to do, what remedy does the public have? As far, if we're talking about private businesses, and we have 3 different grocery stores, and one grocery store keeps selling you rotten fruit, your remedy is you don't buy any fruit there anymore.
Vote by pocketbook.
But with electricity, there's only one power company in town, and that's GPA. So we have to buy.
That's why we have to get on their case.
Well, how do we get on their case?
I mean, if they're talking about building a new power plant, my first question is, hey, are you going to maintain it? And how are you going to do it differently than the other power plant that broke down? Did you maintain that one?
I would remind you something here, another Joe. The power and water authorities are governed by an elected commission called the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. And we just elected 2 commissioners in the last election. So if you're going to get on anybody's case, that's how you do it. But I didn't see any heated opposition to either Joey Duenas or Judy Guthers, who were on the commission and were reelected.
Good, interesting. It's interesting thing to look into. Okay, come on. I'll just keep listening. Thanks for your time.
Okay, another Joe. And I always have to mention this when we talk about the Power Authority. I was pretty hard on the Power Authority here recently. Well, it's been quite a while, I guess. But, when they decided to go into executive session and give their employees a large raise, and then wanted to play hide the ball. It was a messy situation. But when it comes to actually managing the utilities are so much better now than they were in the pre-CCU days before 2001. There's just no comparison. How long has it been since we've had load shedding on Guam? Probably a lot of our international radio listening audience doesn't know what load shedding is.
I know about it, but never experienced it, and I came back on the island in 2006. 2002, I also was here, and I don't remember hearing about that.
Well, back in the 90s, they would publish schedules in the paper for GIGO, load shedding, 10 o'clock till noon, 4 until 6, 10 until midnight. And there was a song called the Load Shedding Blues. It was the #1 hit on the radio. So we don't do that anymore, and I blame it on the CCU. They really cleaned up power. They've done a lot for water. They're not perfect, but they've done a really credible job of picking up that system and working with it. They're not finished, and I'm probably not done raising hell with them, but I think we have to take these things kind of into consideration. Okay, I've got somebody on the line here who wants to talk about power, so I'll hang on to Mary Torres's Bill 312 for a minute until I talk with Jesse about power. Tell me about power, Jesse.
Yeah, so basically the the power rates going up and everything, and the the advancement of solar, and I think Clint Rigel touched upon wanting to go 100% renewable energy or something like that. But the technology does exist to go solar and have a battery storage and whatnot, and then so it's, although it's really expensive, if there's people can, obviously maybe some people can afford it, not everybody, but I think that's something that maybe the government has to start looking into. And like I said, and although they it can't happen right now, and they have to go with this plan for the next 30 years or whatever, at least in the meantime, people could start really thinking about, do they want to break off the grid, and so that's what I have to say about that. But I wanted to call and ask about the was there a MOU between Japan and Guam, or was it strictly between Japan and the United States for the relocation of the Marines from Okinawa?
My understanding is between Japan and the United States.
Right, and Japan said they would, if not mistaken, they pledged to put some money into building up the infrastructure, right?
That's right.
But did that include power and sewer and stuff like that, or?
I know they've already built a sewer treatment plant. I don't remember what else is in the works, but it's pretty substantial.
Okay. Are you familiar with the MOU that the United States with Israel? How they had an MOU? I think it was Obama. It was a renewal basically of an old MOU, and I think Israel got about, I think 33 billion over 10 years, so 3.3 billion a year, which is a lot of money. And just I found it shocking because Israel only has one U.S. base, and it's a U.S. base within the Israeli base, and it's like a small radar monitoring system or something like that. And Guam, we just added another Marine base here, and I mean, I can't imagine if we had some kind of deal like that, what we could do with that type of money, you know what I mean? And obviously, government doesn't have a good track record of spending it, but I think, again, with today's technology and, times are just way different than before, and everything's, it's easier to account for things nowadays. But I just think that we're really, I think we got we got a really bad end of the deal on this buildup, and especially with the labor force, the shortage. It's really hurting our, really hurting everybody outside the fence. That people that want to build homes or build a new business, and then here comes the COVID thing. So just kind of, it's just unfortunate, And we had all that time since 2000, since they started talking about the build up to start training a whole workforce, but I just don't know what ever happened to that. But yeah, that's all I wanted to see and see what your thoughts on that were.
Well, you covered a lot of ground there, but first of all, I think the agreement between the United States and Israel is something you'd call a treaty rather than an MOU. And I hadn't heard of the numbers that you mentioned or any of that sort of thing. I would say this, though, that the considerations that the United States uses in dealing in foreign policy related to Israel are somewhat different than domestic policy relating to any one of the 50 states or the territories. Military bases are also located in many of the states, and the situation is not much different from here. When it comes to the labor force, Jesse, we got 35,000 people out of work. It's unfortunate that the Marine Corps base isn't built and operating right now, because we'd have jobs for some of those folks.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what that's what I was saying is that just I think we've come to a point in the island where, it seems like every 30 years there's something and it's really a turning point, and we definitely know way more than we did 20, 30 years ago. And, the populace is more aware of things. You got the internet at your fingertips and
tall tales.
Tall tales, and and it just it's just going to be interesting, and I just really feel that Guam is I don't know. I mean, we're headed for, who knows what we're headed for, but there's so much up in the air about our status too, and our political status and all that, and our
Jesse,
and
what
our
do you
standing.
think? What do you think about a life tenure for our district court judge?
A life tenure? I'm not too sure. I would just I would say do the 10 years. Is don't, I guess if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? But if that's I don't know if it's broken. I can't comment on that.
Yeah.
What do you think? I just think that.
Well, I just spent a fair amount of time on it, indicating what a good thing it would be for the territory. It fits right into the separatist bag. But we spend so much time talking about other stuff. We don't go after the stuff that was important and that we could have. But anyhow, go ahead, Jesse.
Could I just say one more thing? Is also I just wanted to, maybe you could touch up on that some other time. But yeah, I guess with the district court, I was interested in knowing that Guam didn't include the 9th Amendment in the Bill of Rights or in the Organic Act. So I found that pretty interesting, and and maybe you could touch on that some other time.
Well, just let me turn to the 9th Amendment right now. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, it's the Constitution can still be challenged if the people want to challenge it, right? Or
well, the Constitution does not apply to the island of Guam ex proprio vigere. It applies to the island of Guam because of something called the Mink Amendment, which was part of the elected governor bill in 1968. So those parts that are mentioned there apply to the island.
Okay. Yeah. So and then it's just interesting how even the I guess the U.S. Constitution, once you're on U.S. soil, you're protected. Even if you're not a citizen, you could still have some protection under the Constitution.
A lot of protection, because if you look at the Constitution, the word citizen doesn't appear very often. Most of it goes to persons.
Yes, and you've touched on that before, and that was really interesting because a lot of the freely associated citizens that come to Guam or the 50 states, they pretty much they got a lot of protection under the Constitution, and but also some parts don't apply, and it's the same for people that reside in territory. So I find that pretty interesting, and that's why I think some people are interested in the free association. But first, you have to be a sovereign nation before you, like you said. So
yeah.
But anyways, I just wanted to throw that in today. And
okay, Jesse, good talking to you again.
Okay. All right, you too. Okay, take care.
Okay, so we're already up at the home stretch.
Too much fun today.
Yeah.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. Disinfecting high-touch surfaces daily is key to preventing the spread of viruses. Use solutions with at least 70% alcohol. Some disinfectant brands that have products that meet the EPA's criteria for use against the coronavirus include Clorox, Ecolab, Kimberly-Clark, Lysol, Purell, and SC Johnson. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations, check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are heading down the home stretch here on Tall Tales. I got an interesting post from Andrew. I was talking about the pre-CCU Power Authority and Water Authority compared to the post-CCU Power Authority and Water Authority and what an improvement it is, explaining to Jose what load shedding was all about. If I were a better vocalist, I would sing a few bars of the load shedding blues for him, which was the most popular song on Guam during the 90s. And then Andrew points out that we used to be on a first name basis with each power plant. And you hear people saying, you know, Cabris 1 has got some bad tubes, and they may have to take it offline for a little while tonight. But Cabris 2 is back up now. You know, people, it was almost like following a baseball team. Everybody knew what was wrong with Cabris 1 and Cabris 2 and Cabris 3 and
who went on first?
Yeah, who was on first, etc. And nowadays people don't even care because it's not an issue anymore. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and try to finish up Mary Torres's Bill 312 in the merit system. So I started out here about this idea of hiring EMTs and waiving the requirements of the job. And then the story tells about, well, we're waiving the requirements, and then when the Wuhan virus money runs out, we'll fold them into the fire department and we'll train them up, etc. The whole thing stinks. And it stinks because if you follow politics, you know that one of the things that governors like to do is put people to work. And the thinking is if I as governor do something that causes Smucka Huckowitz over here to get a government job, he'll go home and he'll tell his mother and father and sister, brother and his cousin, hey, I really like that governor. You know, he got me a good GovCom job. So the idea is that the more people that think you put them to work, the better off you're going to be during the next election, because obviously the benefactors are going to think, well, I'm going to vote for that governor because, oh, he got me a GovCom job, or he got my cousin a GovCom job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have Mary Torres's Bill 312, which created a way that people could be snuck into the government.
Folded in.
Folded in. You go over there. Hey, you want a government job? Hey, go over there and apply for that position as MD at the hospital. MD? I didn't even graduate from high school. Don't worry. Go over and just apply. And if they hire you, just stay on the down low for 6 months, because after 6 months, they can't get rid of you if Mary Torres's bill had passed. So is there a connection here between Mary Torres's bill and what we're actually seeing with this EMTs? Is this the trial balloon? Was Mary Torres's bill step 1 and the EMT step 2? And more importantly, is the EMT matter just the tip of a much larger iceberg? Yeah, iceberg. If Mary Torres's bill had passed, would we see a lot of people kind of slid in under the radar, keeping it on the down low for 6 months when they couldn't be removed, all to enhance the chances of Governor Leon Guerrero being reelected? And there was something that was very interesting here in the lead up to Bill 312, something that I had never seen before, and that is we had a shootout between 4 members of the Republican minority and Mary Torres. Yeah. So the minority leader, Tello Taitigui, put out a press release on November 19, and in that press release, she very pointedly showed that Mary Torres was not what they considered to be part of the Republican minority caucus. Here's the language. The Republican Minority Caucus, made up of Senators Tello Taitigui, Luis Boramunya, Jim Moylan, and Will Castro, issue this release in objection to a move that removes any right of the government to remove someone who was erroneously hired and found not to have even minimum set of qualifications. So there wasn't anything kind of polite here. You know, it could have been the press release could have just said the Republican Minority Caucus without naming the four that were in. But by naming the four that were in and leaving Mary Torres out, again, it's not whose name was in the list, it's
whose name was not on the list.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Mary Torres fires back on the same day. Opponents of Bill 312 want employees to lose their jobs. So these folks are supposed to be in the same party. And one could perhaps understand why the Republican Minority Caucus wanted to make it very clear that Mary Torres was not in that select group. As they lobbed snowballs back and forth at each other from opposite sides of the street. So I like to speculate, trying to figure out what are some of the alternatives, what may have been, what may not have been, etc. But did perhaps the Republican minority, the four and the Republican minority, make the same analysis that I did once I saw this EMT story, that this was just a method for the governor to start packing the government payroll with potential voters?
You did ask that question, who is this protecting? Who is this written for?
Yeah, my favorite question, cui bono, right? Yeah, so maybe the four, maybe they sensed that same thing and they said, hey, we got to put a stop to this. Then we look at the sponsor of the bill, which is Mary Torres. And who is Mary Torres' co-sponsor?
That would be the speaker.
Tina Rose Munya Barnes. Yeah, so it all, I don't know what happened. I haven't gotten my crystal ball out of my closet for about 3 months. But I can speculate. And I can speculate that maybe the four members here in the Republican caucus whose names are listed said, no, maybe Mary Torres is comfortable with the Leon Guerrero administration, would like to see round 2 of it. And certainly Tina Rose Munya Barnes is, but count us out. We're not going into that at all. So I'm wondering if maybe that might be the source of some of the shooting here in this shootout. Probably won't be able to find out, but it won't stop me from speculating. Okay, next item on the card here is...
Well, just a real quick question, Bob. You asked under what authority?
Yeah.
I'm thinking the executive order, DPHSS, it can pretty much do anything right now, right?
Yeah, you got a good point there. I suspect that, we've got, the COVID executive order, so we could waive anything.
This is for testing, remember?
Yeah. And all the more insidious, all the more reason that the four people who are apparently now the Republican minority ought to dust off the Bob and Ray resolution. Okay, so that's we've come to the end of the first day back for Tall Tales. Jose and I will be here tomorrow. We'll see you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Reconnecting with old colleagues. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. Democratic sources tell Fox News a longtime national security aide to President-elect Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, is expected to become Biden's nominee for Secretary of State. Blinken served as Deputy Secretary of State and Deputy National Security Advisor during the Obama administration. And President-elect Joe Biden moving ahead with transition plans.
President-elect Joe Biden is continuing to form his cabinet, even as the White House continues to block the transition and fights to overturn election results. Biden's legal team says the system is working as these recounts affirm Biden's win. Lawsuits from the president's allies are tossed in the courts, and Michigan legislators are summoned to Washington in an apparent bid to appoint faithless electors. And despite time lost coordinating with federal agencies amid a public health and economic crisis, Biden's team so far has not pursued legal action.
Fox's Jackie Henry. Meanwhile, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris tweeting Sunday, quote, because Donald Trump refuses to concede the election, we have to fund the transition ourselves. She also included a link for people to make donations to help fund the transition. And with coronavirus cases rising throughout the country, some are concerned there won't be enough personal protective equipment available for healthcare workers as hospitalizations increase. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on the legislation he's pushing forward.
We are pushing a plan that we have just introduced in the Senate called